Welcome to GHRTV. I'm joined today by Arushi Tangri. Thank you very much for agreeing to have a conversation with me for the International Women's Rights Day 2023. So thank you very much for being here.
Thanks a lot, and I have been quite wanting to be part of this thing. It's a privilege to be interviewed by Global Human Rights Defense for this. Yeah.
Thank you. So before we start with some questions regarding the International Women's Day, would you mind telling the viewers who you are, what you do for a living? Just give us a bit of an idea.
Sure. So I'm a lawyer by profession. I completed my law school from India, and I've been working with international organizations as well as having my own non-profit legal organization. And I do a lot of work into human rights and specifically on gender and child rights. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. I think that gives us a little bit of background info. So you work with ConnectAID, an organization who is working towards sustainable development goals and who is trying to connect different NGOs. Maybe you want to phrase it a little bit more detailed, what you do as an organization later on. But what we're interested in is to hear the organizations that you're dealing with in your everyday life. Does the discussion of gender and women's rights ever come up?
For sure. So Connect is basically a platform for sustainable development goals, and we are trying to work with organizations all across the globe which are working for the SDGs, and gender equality is one of the prime concerns for us. We have this partnership divisions which I'm kind of being part of, and specifically with my focus to bring more NGOs and foundations on board who are working for the SDGs. And the gender equality is an important aspect because we face that, having worked with organizations all across the globe, especially the global south. There is a lot of lacuna, or I would say the gap, which is not being fulfilled. And in plan to compare it with the West, we try that, okay, if we bring a platform where organizations from the West as well as the South come into board, like the North and the South come together, I think it's going to be an opportunity where these things get little bit decreased as gender equality, inequality is there all over the world. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we're going to have a little bit of a conversation about the SDGs later on as well. Yeah. Before we go in there, I know that you're a lawyer and that you studied law. So when we talk about women, female lawyers, general female legal professionals, why do you think people should hire a female lawyer? Are there things that we maybe can do better than, well, men?
Of course. I think women lawyers are really required in different aspects. I'll tell you why. Because having been one, I'm coming from a practicing background back in New Delhi, India, where I've worked in the High Court and Supreme Court for a long time, and I see there are a lot of places where only women lawyers can be a bit more encouraging towards solving issues, especially with cases which are based on rapes, domestic violence, marital issues. So all these aspects require women, because if you need to deal with clients who are women, a male cannot, compare himself having the same emotional aspect to that. So as a woman, I would say, even with the child rights, because I have done a lot of child counseling, especially for women, and especially because when there are domestic issues happening. So I feel what a woman has is more of an emotional, and those instincts are not always there with a man. So that is where women, even qualified women, would be there to help in those case scenarios. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, I agree. Often it does make sense. The theme of the International Women's Day this year in 2023 is Innovation and Technology for Gender Equality. So if you hear this topic that they have chosen, do you think a better theme could have been picked?
As far as the theme is this year's theme, I feel that is pretty relevant, because considering the women's role in the fields of science, maths and technology, it's been always a lot of struggle which they face in comparison to their male counterparts. So I feel that this is going to be a good highlight towards these issues, because although we are dealing with gender equality in all sectors, but science and technology is something where I feel that the male sector, or I would say the male dominance, is more, and women have always been kind of looked in a way that, okay, that they are not very, I would say, skilled or qualified to deal or handle these professions in this particular sector of science and technology and maths. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you. I agree. So I personally identify as a woman, and I've been working in the human rights field for a couple of years. And I've seen with GHRD as well that the protection and enjoyment of women's rights it very differs between societies. So we talked about your experience a little bit in India, where you're from. So what is your experience in this, in terms of differences between societies?
Of course, I feel that there is a huge considerable difference which I myself have felt while I was back in India pursuing my basic education, my legal education. The struggles and the basic things which we fight for are way more different than what women over here in the West fight for. I wouldn't say the topics are different, but I would say maybe with an example like what I would say is a right for you, maybe it could be a privilege or a dream for me.
Yeah.
Like an education, like getting even a basic education in high school in India. Sometimes women and children, the girl child suffers to get that, and more or less the male child is preferred to be sent to the school. But I think in West it would be still not a problem where you would say that okay, it's an equality in that way that both of the children get the right to go to the school. So these are the minute issues from where the inequality starts, and I think the culture, the society, and the gender norms are quite different all over the world, especially if you see the case of Afghanistan these days. So we can see that how countries are dealing with these things as per their own society and I would say the background which they have, the historical background which they come with. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting that you mention Afghanistan, because there again we see how education is one of the first targets when we talk about girls' rights and the rights of women. So I know that you studied in Maastricht in the Netherlands. If you look back at that experience, what do you think, did gender, you being a woman, did that play a role towards your colleagues, professors, or maybe even looking back at your country of India?
Of course, I think being a woman, I would say that it has been a very important aspect in my life, and in terms of getting those opportunities and also having the fair share of struggles, I would say. If I would first come to Maastricht, I think it was somewhere where I could see that there's a lot of equality in terms of you getting the opportunities, in terms of presenting yourself, as well as those opportunities in terms of equal participation in things. But back in my country, there are instances where, as a woman, I had to kind of sometimes take a step back. That okay, I'm female. I'm a woman. I cannot participate in this because it's somewhere where the patriarchal system still kind of seeps in, even in the education sector, I would say. So there have been instances where I would say that it's a considerable difference, and I think we are, as developing countries, we are still trying to come up to that level, and in terms of getting those similar footing or setting for women back in the home countries. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
So if we talk about struggle in different countries, and then we circle back to the Sustainable Development Goals, Goal 5, gender equality. Do you have hopes, concerns when it comes to different countries achieving these goals?
Of course, I think although it's a multilateral world which we are trying to achieve, not before, I would say now since the pandemic is there, the globalization, I would say that has been there all over, but I would say still as the countries are not, I would say, is it more because of the gender norms, or I would say their own historical as well as cultural backgrounds? This is the reason where the gender equality, SG5 specifically, which we're talking about, is not being achieved, because it's the mindset and the societal mindset, I would say, which needs to be changed. And it's the only country's mindset which requires change, because if I would say, like in Muslim countries, I would say there are a lot of countries where women are not even allowed to drive. So I would say this is the mindset which has to be changed first, and then only you can come on the global forum and say that, okay, we want to achieve gender equality. Just participation into these discussions, I wouldn't say that would solve the purpose. You need to bring those measures as well as those policies and changes in the law back in your home countries with the mindset change that, okay, you want to take those steps and, the society is acceptable. So it's important that even the male counterparts are trying to, equally accept that, okay, we want changes for the women in our society. That's very important. Yeah,
okay. So even as a lawyer, you would say change of mindset before change of legislation?
Of course.
Okay. I have a different question now, because in Germany the so-called gender pay gap was just established.
Yeah.
2 different numbers, but roughly 18%. That's the number that women still earn less than their male colleagues. What are your thoughts on that? What are your experiences when we talk about pay?
I think even in the last year, in 2022, the ILO published a report which said that women are paid 20% less globally, and I think far more it's different in different countries. Like if I talk about India, the gender pay parity is a lot. I myself have faced it while I started my practice, and with the same person with the same year of practice, where we both had the same skills. The person was the male my male colleague was paid more just because he was a male, and the same quality of work and everything was delivered by me, but I was paid still less. So I have faced it myself. So let alone be that I have studied about it. So this is gonna be, I think it's gonna take few more couple of decades to come to that level, and that's what I come back to my previous statement that okay, just making changes in the law and the policies is not only required. The mindset of both the genders, I would say, male and female, both is required to have a equality, because then only there will be more acceptance of such things. Because if you bring changes in the laws, it's more that the implementation is required, and that can only be done through the change in mindset of such people.
Yeah, and I think, as you say, both genders have to act on it, because women have to start being upset about this again, that we work the same hours, we work just as hard, sometimes harder, because we have to fight harder to be taken seriously. I think you and I had that discussion before, and then we get paid less, and we're still here, we're still working, rather than saying, okay, now I'm on a strike.
Exactly.
So just one last question. We have a young audience, we have interns, followers who are young legal professionals or female law students. What would your advice to them be when taking on their career?
I think what is more important is for them to judge their own instincts as well as judgments. Because while I wanted to practice law, I was told that it is not a safe profession back in those days, and I was told and schooled about it that you should be more of like a teacher or somebody like a scholar or a research person. But I trusted my own judgment, and I trusted my own skills and my heart, and yes, we are here today. So I would say that trust yourself, and the things would work out for you for sure.
Okay, thank God you did. Good. Okay, thank you very much for making the time today. I think nothing left to say for me, but thank you. And for everyone watching, to please follow us on GHRTV, Global Human Rights Defense, for more interviews and human rights news.